And so really what's happening is this is about outsourcing government to private corporations and foundations. So it's a soft coup. It's a coup d'etat. And human capital is how the value of your life is going to be measured. And of course, that's going to be, a function of how much you consume, how much energy is required to support your continued existence on this earth. And if the value that you create or don't create, isn't proportionate to the amount that you consume, then again, you're going to have to be, cut off. Okay. I think I'm live. If you're able to see this, maybe type me a message and let me know that I'm on. Anyway, today is, what is it? It's September 2nd. It is, what is today? Thursday. It's been a long, crazy day. We were running around, and so I wanted to do this earlier, but life got in the way. So I'm going to try to do it now and talk through some buzzwords and go over inclusive capitalism with you guys. And I think I'll try to do it briefly so that it's manageable. And oh, yay! I see people. Oh, that's so cool. I'm not. You won't even believe this crazy setup that I have. I have books piled up, and so. But now, I have the computer high, so I can see the comments. That's so cool. This is the first time I've done it like this. So anyway, if you follow my page, you know that I post a lot about inclusive capitalism and social impact finance and the fourth industrial revolution, and I try to, talk a lot to people who live nearby. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and our city and really our state are a pilot for many of the 4IR rollouts that are going on in the U.S. So I try to write a lot of stuff about Tulsa and Oklahoma, but that's definitely relevant across the world because we are talking about people who operate, I hope you can see this, with a playbook. And this is so important. I don't think you can see it very well. But anyway, connection is spotty. So what I write about Tulsa is often the same type of thing that's going on in Australia or in Britain or in any number of countries, in South America, in South Africa. The people who are rolling out this technocratic, communitarian, globalist, social engineering plan, whatever you want to call it, they're not creative people. They are systems engineers, and we are the system that they are trying to engineer. So their goal is bad. Their programs are worse. They are not very creative people, and they like to use a trial and error method to figure out what works best, what's going to give them the highest probability of success. So, when you see phrases like evidence-based or data-driven, those phrases signify this concern that they have to proof or to pilot their programs. So Tulsa, Oklahoma is a pilot city. And so if we can, I've always thought if we can help people to understand the buzzwords and the playbook, then, we can topple this thing. I mean, maybe not totally, because we're dealing with, Goldman Sachs and governments and, huge banks, the Vatican, the biggest players are adversaries here are just huge. So we're going to really have to get scrappy. But I think we can knock off a lot of their plans, thwart them, and buy time, and then who knows what will happen. But anyway, if we can figure out their playbook and figure out a way to attack it in one spot, then really that attack can be replicated throughout the world. So, my friends in Australia, and God bless you, I just can't even imagine. I just can't even imagine. Know that people in the U.S. are paying attention and we care, and if I could, I don't know, if I could go over and rescue people, I would, but we're in a pickle here too, so we're all going to have to really step up and be responsible for our own turf. But whenever we stand up in our own areas of the world, I think that that has effects that are they grow exponentially throughout the world. So if I stand up here in Tulsa, it's going to help people in other countries, because we chip away at them, and then and we figure out our own playbooks. So one thing you'll see over and over again is that the language that is used when it comes to any of the programs that are associated with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the 4IR, they always have the same language. And so that's part of their playbook. It's part of their toolkit. And I wish I had a bolder marker. Let's see. So we have a playbook, we have a toolkit. And so today I want to go over the toolkit or the playbook for inclusive capitalism and what that looks like. So here is, and I'll try to hold it up here. This is the Framework for Inclusive Capitalism. And this is the U.S. version. You can see it. There we go. But every country has one of these. And it's really the same thing as the Great Reset. It's the same thing as the New World Order. They package it differently, because if, say, the Great Reset, if that phrase acquires a bad reputation, then they have something waiting in the wings to, a new phrase to roll out. And if you followed some of my posts, you'll see that really it's a marketing program, and it depends on reputation capital. So they have to have something like this that's behind, to follow when we all start to figure out about Klaus and his Great Reset. So so every country has one of these, I think. And in the American version, we have, it's a new compact among businesses, government, and American workers. Now, this should shock anyone, because we have, in the White House, there's a coalition between the Coalition for Inclusive Capitalism and the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance and the Biden White House. So they are all working together, and your chambers of commerce everywhere. They're working together to roll out this new compact. Now, it's not a contract. That's important. It's a new compact among businesses, government, and American workers. So one thing that ought to stand out to anyone we are really who is just looking at this title page, a system of constitutional government that has its authority is derived from the people, who then select representatives to express their will in official capacity in government. We're moving from that kind of a model to a model in which businesses, instead of governments dealing with citizens, we're having businesses who are going to deal with workers. And so your rights under this framework come from your status as a worker. Now, it's all right here. I'll show it to you. And I post this document. I'll go back and I'll add a link to it after I'm done. But, I posted a lot, and it says, we are concerned with workers' rights. And so really what's happening is this is about outsourcing government to private corporations and foundations. So it's a soft coup. It's a coup d'etat. And I tell people this in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I tell people at, my kids' soccer games. They don't want to hear it, but I'm like, we're in the middle of a coup d'etat, right? Because, let's see. I'm going to see if I can find the page and I'll read it to you. But it says, yes, we want to protect workers' rights. So let me just read some of this. It says, we first came together on this commission in late 2019 to identify the necessary foundational elements for building a more inclusive capitalism. So you see, they've been working on this for a long time. Cindy Niles in Australia. Oh, I love her. She just did a video yesterday where she talked about the various moves that have led up to this current Great Reset. And she mentioned the 2008 housing collapse and the worldwide recession, I think they called it, or mini depression, something like this. So that definitely led up to where we are today. But, they've been working on this coalition for inclusive capitalism, and they've just been waiting to roll it out. And they have to have, everything put in place. You have to have digital health records already ready. You have to have digital educational services already ready. You have to have run pilot programs for this, and I'll explain this a little bit more. But you have to have a lot of the infrastructure already ready to go, so that when in 2020 it was 2019, 2020 in March. I had to think about that. When they declare that there's a pandemic, and we have to move to digital, we have to move to remote work, remote school, remote life. Most of that infrastructure already had to be laid out. So now that they had most of that in place, and with this excuse of a public health crisis, now they're really pushing everything on us. And you can see that, we've gone from, most of us didn't even pay attention to electronic health records. Well, now we have cities and states and entire nations in the world that are rolling out vaccine passports. So this was in the works. But, you have to be patient and you have to be cunning if you're going to plan a global coup, which is going on in every single country. But let's see, where is this about right? So it says, we came together because we recognize that many of our economic policies and practices over the last 40 years led to a decline of economic opportunity and positive outcomes for American workers, particularly at lower income levels, while historic racial and other injustices continue to disproportionately limit the opportunity for many to share in the American dream. When you look at what's going on in the corporate literature that talks about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, that talks about inclusive capitalism, that talks about a reset, you will see that three things are mentioned. One is the need for a public health monitoring infrastructure. Two is we need to be attentive to systematic racism and structural racism and inequality. And then the third is climate change. So this is like the trifecta of justifications for doing away with the Constitution, or whatever each particular country has, and rolling out corporate governance. You have those three things. You have public health, you have racism, and you have environmental. Or climate change, which of course, they're doing the climate change. You can see them with their planes and their trails and everything else. So they are going to address this economic inequality. Now, these are all buzzwords. I should write them down, but I think maybe you can't see it very well. I don't know. Can you see? If I write on the board, can you see it? Is somebody there? I don't know. So when we see, I'll just list a bunch of them. Economic opportunity. Anytime you see the word opportunity, like opportunity zones, impact opportunity, opportunity networks, that word is a buzzword. Now, it sounds like an ordinary word to most of us, right? You know, you think, how do you know opportunity? That's like a regular word. That's not jargon. Well, yes, it is. It's actually the perfect kind of buzzword because it doesn't stand out quite so garishly as sustainability. You know, everybody knows that sustainability has to do with Agenda 21 and environmental reforms. Okay, but opportunity is pretty bland. It could refer to any number of things. So that actually makes it a perfect buzzword. So anytime you see opportunity, anytime you see inequality, anytime you see, outcomes, positive outcomes, lower income levels, when we talk about vulnerable people, the underserved, all of those are buzzwords. And if you just start paying attention to those or make a list, and I have a post, you can probably search my profile, and it says, if you search for buzzwords, there's a big list. And I need to update it, but it'll give you a good start. So they are saying that we need to address this situation of inequality and, the situation in which we have favored capital over labor, wealth over work at the expense of workers and others. Okay, so they're saying that we've given too much to the capitalists and we need to start protecting workers, right? Oh yeah, we really need to. So we're going to do it with inclusive capitalism, right? And the big corporations are going to protect workers' rights. So, and we're going to, and it says we're going to protect smaller companies. Yeah, right. Let's see, what else could I pick out for you here? Where it says we have to make the wealthy pay their fair share. You know, it's all an inversion because, of course, what we're moving toward is a technocratic hell. It's a religious technocratic hell. So Nikki Rapana has written a lot about communitarianism. She's the founder of the Anti-Communitarian League, and her work is absolutely essential, I think, to understanding the religious nature of this, where we are sort of baptized into a new community of workers. So let me see, but I wanted to find, okay, so what this says. I don't know, let me see if I can hold it up here further. Okay, this is page 4 if you download the document. The wealthy and most powerful in our society, the people who have seen their wealth grow enormously during the time of COVID-19 must give up some of the privileges they have gained and pay their fair share of the cost of building a sustainable economy based upon well-paid jobs. Government should develop systematic rules that give workers a meaningful opportunity to have their voice heard on such basic issues as compensation, benefits, and protection. Business, too, must do its fair share, including adopting practices that offer workers greater voice in the corporation. See, that's where if we're talking about political constitutional forms, a citizen has a voice that they express in government. And yes, I know, like, our systems are all a sham and presidents are selected, not elected. But just setting that aside, this is this is a model that just takes the public myth of representative government and does away with it. I mean, we're changing an entire civil political myth right in front of people, and they're just oblivious to it. So the framework for inclusive capitalism is calling for government to ensure that workers have a voice in the corporation. So this is current government, like the vestiges of this shell of a thing that is, limping along right now. It is supposed to use its remaining power and the legitimacy, that whatever remaining legitimacy it has, to take one last big stab at those big corporations and make them respect workers' rights. So that's like the swan song of our constitutional system. It's for government to use its last vestige of power to force the corporations to recognize workers' voices. Now, of course, that is a big sham, because what they're really doing is empowering corporations to spy on their employees, to require endless professional development and sensitivity training, because we have to make sure that we not only address public health and climate change, the health of the planet, but we also have to address, all of the issues that come under, diversity and inclusion and implicit bias and all of this stuff that is right now. That narrative is being exploited just to divide regular people, so that, one race blames another, one class blames another, and we don't focus on the big guys that are really doing this. But see, this is why I don't do live things, because I told myself I was going to do only like 15 minutes, but I haven't even gotten to the buzzwords. I'm so sorry. Okay, so this says, but they want government to use its power to force businesses and corporations, the big corporations, and they're all in cahoots, to make our workers' lives fair and balanced, inclusive, equitable. Okay, so this says, okay, so we're going to have three, if we go to page 5. Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay, so page 5 mentions that, every study demonstrates that diversity, equity, and inclusion, those are your buzzwords, right? And you see that they're talking about studies. They have piloted these programs, trial and error. Talk about Australia. They're the test market for the world, especially for the U.S. So what's happening in Australia matters. They've tested all of these programs with the people in Australia, and then they're going to roll them out here. And I just have a feeling that it's going to get really ugly here, because they've saved us for last, and, the Americans are still armed, and I think, the race baiting, like the stoking of that narrative I think it's really, passions are being inflamed. So I'm concerned about how that plays out. But they have used study after study to demonstrate that diversity, equity, and inclusion are not only morally urgent, but also the best way to improve our economy. And remember, this is Bill Clinton. It's the economy, stupid, right? So that's what they're really trying to wreck right now. You wreck the economy, you demolish it in order to control supply chains particularly of labor, because we want a nation of workers, not citizens, not human beings, not men, women. We want workers. So they want workers that are going to train the robots the algorithms and, supply extra organs for people. I mean, it's very gruesome. Okay, but the framework, it moves from a political system to this corporate governance because the most important asset that can be managed like through a supply chain is human beings, and they want human beings to be workers. So excuse me. So they're going to focus on wrecking the economy so that people don't have their old jobs. They're going to have to go back and be retooled or reskilled or upskilled. They use all of those words, retooled. Whenever you see that, any of those three words, reskilling, upskilling, retooling, then your workforce development, economic development, that's the same thing as workforce development. So when they start to talk about that, then that you're dealing with an inclusive capitalism program or some version of it. And you can start to put the pieces together. We have to control what type of education and skills training people get so that they can provide for the needs of business and industry that have already been agreed upon in these metropolitan planning organizations, so that have laid out workforce development plans, or sometimes they're called MPOs, like Master Planning Organization. They come up with a plan for the targeted industries in your area. So in Tulsa, we have cybersecurity, we have healthcare, we have aeronautical research, drones, and some ag and some finance. So those 5 areas are areas that are, little petty tyrants. I'm sorry. In the mayor's office and in the county seat and at the state level, they're courting these different businesses. Really it's the foundations and the billionaires that are doing it. But they use these little petty tyrants to do their dirty work. They court these companies that are in those industries, and you really want to develop workers that are capable of meeting the needs of those specific industries. So if you want to be an artist in Tulsa, well, you're just going to have to know some people who work with the foundation, who pair with Smart Growth America, who come up with their little, propaganda campaigns that are going to be funded by tax dollars. You're going to have to be one of those kind of artists. You can't study art and become an artist, on your own. Like that goes against our plan, our regional plan. And, for sustainable development, this is something maybe I should have said at the beginning. Sustainable development is a pattern of economic growth that does not depend on the use of finite resources. So you want to make economic growth independent from the use of finite resources. Because if, let's say, you use all those finite resources up, then your prospects for economic growth would be out the door. So that would be unsustainable. So the proponents of sustainable development want to make sure that they can, I guess I sort of skipped a step there. They want to decouple economic growth from finite resources, natural resources. Anyway, that's why they want to move us to the cloud and to virtual life, but there's sort of an intermediary step, and that's just about controlling production and consumption so that you can balance the load and never get to a sort of point of scarcity. So our technocratic, communitarian, social engineers, they want to control the supply of labor and also the production of goods and services, which in the US we don't really produce any goods anymore. So it will be like, this is going to be controlling the knowledge economy. And it is all about managing production and consumption and the supply chains of workers that go into those areas. So you wreck the economy so that you can force everyone to have to go back to be retooled. And of course, all the institutions that are doing the retooling, they know what the target industries are for your area. I mean, that's why the university that I worked at was taken over, because you had to cut off the supply of, alternative ideas. You couldn't have an institution that might still promulgate the myth that you could be an artist or an actor or, a Ph.D. mathematician. They got rid of a Ph.D. in mathematics. So you have to control the ideas and the knowledge that is available to people, and you're going to do that by forcing them to have to go back to get retooled in organizations that are only offering certain types of education or training. And then that prepares them for what? For work, the 4IR workforce. So, if you do that, then the idea is that we will have a sustainable economy. It will be managed. So when you see your Chamber of Commerce talking about economic development, they are not talking about organic entrepreneurial activity. They like to talk about entrepreneurship, but they talk about social entrepreneurs. And those are the guys that just come up with some silly plan to repackage a software model and offer it to the people as something new of value. And really the only new thing is the branding, okay? So we're not talking, when you hear your Chamber of Commerce or your mayor talk about economic development, they're talking about like a developed economy, a managed economy, like a housing development is. They're not talking about, creative outbursts and, people doing different things and testing things and failing and succeeding and, working it out. That's not it at all. What they want to do is control the supply of skills that are produced through these retooling institutions, and then they want to fit those to specific careers in the targeted industries. So all of, the move, just to sort of bring this back, the move away from constitutional government to corporate governance is a recognition that managing workers is the new pattern of what they want our lives to be like. So anyway. Okay, so there are 3 pillars of that, and I mean, it's just ridiculous. The commission, this is the Commission on Inclusive Capitalism, which is, it's all the big banks. It is the head of like the American Council on Education. Let's see, Lumina Foundation, I think, lots of big bad guys. Okay, 3 pillars of key principles and recommendations are organized under these 3 pillars. Opportunity, I told you that's a buzzword. Expansion, that's your economic growth. And gain sharing, and that is equity. So equity, is not equality. Equity is making sure that everyone has, the same share of these managed finite goods. Let's see. Okay. So pillar 1. Principles. Recognize, and here we go. Let's see, I don't know how long I've been on. It's probably been too long, so I should probably maybe do pillar 1 and then come back tomorrow. Now that I know how to do this, I'll do pillar 2. Okay, we've got to recognize that all workers are essential workers. deserving certain basic rights, including the right to be paid a fair share of the value they create. I mean, I don't know if people realize how significant that is, okay? We are going to recognize that all workers are essential workers. Essential to whom? It's not to ourselves. It's not to our neighbors. We are essential to them. Because only those, only the workers that are useful to them are going to make it. I mean, we have a little bit of time to muddle through this, but, not much. They're going to figure out who serves those targeted industries, who serves like their larger transhumanist, sicko, satanic program. And then the rest of us, they'll find a way to do away with us. Okay, but first, you have to recognize that all workers are essential workers. And when it talks about that, recognizing this, that is actually a religious or moral precept that's being handed down. Like, you have to recognize this. I mean, it reminds me of Hegel and the master-slave dialectic, right? Like, so you have to do that. And these essential workers are deserving certain basic rights. So no longer does your Constitution guarantee you rights. No longer do you have natural rights that derive from your creator, or, you don't have divine rights, but rather your basic rights are derived from your status as an essential worker. I wish people would think about that. And this includes the right to be paid a fair share of the value that they create. So when we look at that last clause, like, this is important, and I wish I could always write these things up, but it just takes too much time. Okay, the right to be paid a fair share of the value that they create. Well, anyone who reads that is going to think, oh yeah, of course, like, we want people to make a decent wage for the work that they do. Maybe it's a living wage, maybe it's not, but it's something that that compensates them justly for the service or the production that they have made. Okay, but what that's not what this means. When this says including the right to be paid a fair share of the value they create, that actually is setting up for impact investing and impact tracking. Because when you link these rights to compensation, and when you also try to accurately measure the value that someone creates, what this, sorry, my blood sugar is a little bit low. What you need to do is, or what these companies are setting up for, is to track and trace every single contribution that your life makes or doesn't make. So when they say you're going to have the right to be paid a fair share of the value that you create, this is setting up to measure the value that you create. So it's social credit scoring, it's human capital scoring. We have to measure that in order to do what? To pay you a fair share. So I think that's very important for people to realize, like, these nice words, the right to be paid a fair share. No. That is not what this is about. It's actually about measuring the value that you create. So on my Facebook, I have that little picture. It's a screenshot from the World Economic Forum, and it says from fixed capital to human capital. That's what this is talking about. And human capital is how the value of your life is going to be measured. And of course, that's going to be, a function of how much you consume. how much energy is required to support your continued existence on this earth. And if the value that you create or don't create, isn't proportionate to the amount that you consume, then again, you're going to have to be, cut off. Okay. So also, B, this is pillar of, point B of pillar 1. We're going to safeguard workers from dramatic economic dislocation, including sudden dislocation caused by crises or technological advances, by offering opportunities to continue active workforce participation and ensure that workers have a voice in establishing these protections. So this is resilience. And again, I'll share this document with you. But point B of pillar 1 is it's really about resilience, safeguarding workers from economic dislocation. Make sure that they can continue to be active participants in the workforce, because that's what really matters. That is, in practice, what it's going to look like is it's going to mean job sharing. So, no longer are you going to be able to go out and have a full-time professional salaried position. Rather, it's all going to be gig work. It's all going to be job sharing. So you're actually not in control of, say, the quality of the work that your office, I guess you could call it that your office produces, because you're going to be sharing it with others. So, just when I start thinking about that, psychologically, what does that do to someone? Well, you're really unable to, to control, the quality of your work. And I think most people actually do care about that. Most people have some pride in their job. So, so that's a sort of secondary effect of gig work and job sharing and resilience. So another thing that resilience is basically just your ability to adapt to major disruptions. That's what resilience means. So it means that you are adequately prepared to manage any risk. And one of the main ways that we're doing that is by going digital. So, safeguard workers from economic dislocation. This is saying we want to make sure that even if even if we're in the midst of a pandemic, you can still work, you can still create your value for us at your home, surveilled, remotely. Okay, that's what this is about. So it sounds nice, safeguard workers from these tough situations, but it's not really. It's really about ensuring that the company can continue to extract value from you, whether or not you can go into the office. And it's about them hedging their bets on, any particular position in the company. They don't want just one person to have that position, because that puts the company at risk. What if that one person that does a really great job and is so important that they become, indispensable? That puts the company at risk, especially if you think that it could be the case that one very valuable employee, maybe he doesn't recycle, maybe he doesn't have enough people of other races in his family or circle of friends, So you don't want, because we're moving to a model that is based on reputation capital, you don't want to place all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak. You don't want to have any one employee be a human capital or reputation capital liability. Okay, so resilience, that means for the company, we want to make sure that we can continue to extract all of the value from employees, even under difficult circumstances, and we want to make sure that anything that those employees do could be automated or replicated by, if not another human being, then a robot or an AI. Okay, so C, the point C on this pillar 1 of the framework is we need to increase public investment in basic research and development to expand the frontiers of knowledge, science, and technology throughout investment life cycles, and adopt policies to ensure that the benefits are more evenly shared among workers and the public. So in the U.S., we have this horrible infrastructure bill that is basically just paying a lot. It's taxpayers are funding smart cities and light rail. So we're going to be moved into mega regions, and all of the wires that are going up, all the broadband, all the cameras, all the passports, everything that you see rolling out, it's tied to smart city infrastructure, and it's going to be funded somehow in a backdoor, corrupt way, because that's how everything is right now, through that infrastructure bill. And that bill is not about protecting cities. It's not about even facilitating what we would think of as genuine economic activity, like organic economic activity. Nope, it's about ensuring that we can move to a digital currency. It is about ensuring that you don't have any uprisings when people don't want to go be retooled. And they say, hell no, we're not gonna do that. Instead, we're gonna get rowdy. Well, they are gonna manage all of that through this surveillance infrastructure that's being set up, and that's all directly tied to these public investments in research and development. And we're going to make sure that their benefits are evenly shared among workers and the public. That's going to be advanced by the nudging of everyone into smart cities, so that you can really watch every aspect of their lives and make sure that we have an equitable distribution of surveillance and our lab grown worm meat or whatever it is. Okay, the last point on pillar 1 is eradicate discriminatory policies and practices in the public and private markets that have continued to lead to large disparities along racial, ethnic, gender, and disability lines within our workforce and pay equity. Okay, so this is like a cheap tactic to use these societal problems that we've had. There are problems of sexism, of racism, of whatever. We are human beings and we're flawed creatures, and sometimes we're just not going to get along. A lot of times we will get along, and it depends. We're human beings. We don't want to promote hateful things by any means, but this is a plan to that plays on the hatred of the idea of hatred. So this just really gets, I think it panders to ideologically inclined people who need a sort of a crutch, or they need an enemy or a thing to attack. And so we're going to attack racism, sexism, all of that. And we're going to use that in order to make sure that we have workforce and pay equity. So again, the pay equity is going to be based on measuring your value as a human being. And your value as a human being is also going to be based on how equitable and diverse and inclusive, the patterns of your life are. So it's, it's a reflexive feedback loop, really. But it's all about data collection and managing your beliefs and then your behaviors. But whereas the law today really touches behavior. It's going to regulate conduct, and if you cross a line in action, then you might be subject to some kind of civil or criminal charges. But just having a certain belief isn't problematic. That's what this is designed to do. It's designed to problematize certain beliefs. And so we see that in social media. We see that in all the propaganda that's rolled out. I mean, I'm just amazed that people believe that shite and think it's real journalism. I wonder if human beings even write it because it's so bad. But so these 4 things. Pillar 1 is the principles of the framework, and it is about transforming human beings into workers. And actually, it doesn't even use the word human beings. It says recognize that all workers are essential workers. So there you're going to have an opportunity for robot rights. I know it sounds crazy, but really robots, and that's a lot of what like the transgender agenda is about, is pushing robot rights to compete with humans so that, you can imagine where that's going. But so we're going to diminish the status of human beings. We're going to diminish the status even of citizens into workers. And we're going to measure the value that they create. So it's not only about tracking and tracing your movements or your health, but it's actually about tracking and tracing your value as a human being. Safeguarding workers, that's the resilience. So that's the point 2, resilience. And that means, again, like enabling corporations to, they're going to say that they're helping workers, but really what they're doing is they're hedging their bets against some individuals' like lower reputation capital score. And like I said, I think I'll probably have to wrap this up. I did not mean to go this long, but maybe tomorrow or another day I'll go over the ESG reporting requirements for corporations, because that is crucial. Every corporation is going to be required to track environmental, social, and governance metrics. And that, the social is is where human capital fits in. And, you think, well, what if companies don't want to do this? Well, that's why they have destroyed the economy, because companies are going to be forced to do it. Because already small businesses are I don't know the percentage of how many small businesses have been lost. But, those provided a buffer, a place of freedom for workers and entrepreneurs and business people to do what they wanted without all of the McKinsey and Deloitte BS coming down. But now that those guys have been taken out, then, maybe you have some mid-sized corporations that are left. Well, they, if they serve or do business with any of the large corporations like Microsoft or Amazon, those corporations have memorandums of understanding that say, and I read this on the Microsoft website, say we will not work with contractors who cannot demonstrate, their carbon impact, their environmental impact. So if the businesses that are remaining, if they want to be able to do business with any of these large corporations, and maybe it's an insurance company, maybe you contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're going to be forcing you to track and trace ESG metrics. And that is, because that's so important, your ESG scores are going to determine the value of your company from another company. And if you think that we're moving toward this virtual software as a service model, really the only thing that's going to distinguish most corporations that are delivering virtual experiences, it's going to be their brand. So you have to manage those ESG metrics and the scores very, very carefully. So on this point too, the resilience point, this is not about making sure that workers, human beings, have the means to keep working even during a lockdown. What it really means is that this is going to provide a way for corporations to hedge their bets against, my kiddos just got home, for them to hedge their bets against like rotten apples of reputation capital. So they don't, they want to have gig workers and job sharing so that, they just want to make sure that no one's going to be a bad apple and bring their ESG score down. Then, we use the power of government as remaining like appearance of legitimacy to invest in tech. So you fleece the taxpayers to pay for the means of our own, prison life and surveillance. And then we're going to eradicate these, point four is eradicate discriminatory policies and practices that will then get us to workforce and pay equity. So we're going to use, all of this language of caring about, our brothers and sisters of another race, or, that opposite sex, or whatever it is, people with any kind of disability. That is being weaponized, and it's weaponized in order to track and trace our attitudes and to mandate beliefs, and it's also being used to decrease the productivity of businesses. Because, okay, so you're going to have quotas. You have to have so many black people, so many brown people, so many white people, so many, people of whatever demographic they want to come up with. And so you're not going to pick the best person for the job. And I think that is deliberate. It's, it's designed to decrease productivity of any like small to mid-sized companies that could still eke out their own living, their own independence. This is, it's designed to make you jump through hoops and do professional development. So it's really all about control. Since, I had planned to like write these words out, but since you couldn't see it, I was going to put this up there too. I'll try to fix that before my next little overview of this stuff. I hope it was helpful. I just thought I'd go with it. But anyway, I'll go back through some of these comments and I'll try to respond to those, and maybe just do a couple of different sessions like this. And maybe, who knows, maybe we just message me and tell me what you'd like to do. But we could have even a seminar where you print this off and then we just go through it as like a virtual classroom. But we can unpack like those phrases, like the right to be paid a fair share of the value they create. Because once people understand this, you can see it happening. And I think people, they'll understand about, trying to cripple small businesses. They'll understand about there's going to be no work. But we do have to sort of chip through and show that the buzzwords are hiding something very dark. So anyway, thank you guys for bearing with me, and I'm always trying to figure out a new technique, but I'll have that ready like tomorrow or this weekend. We'll do this again, and we'll do pillar 2. Okay, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.